mentioned earlier that when they were doing the fundraising originally, the life leases, they were having problems getting money from the banks.
Yes.
But Yihong had 306 life leases that,
Well,
how
that's
did they get
one
around
shot.
that problem?
Well,
They
sure.
were organized, they were better capitalized, and they knew what the F they were doing.
So what, I mean, the retirement residences should have been purchased with cash available, right? So people who are retiring should have been able to purchase this with cash available rather than trying to get a mortgage to buy a retirement home, right? And so our community either wasn't ready or didn't understand the situation, had money saved under their bed but didn't use it, or they did use it and it was at risk of being lost. So because some of the people, and I interviewed almost every single one of these people, they had a lot of savings and they did buy outright some of these units. And so it wasn't necessarily a matter of not having the funds, but some of them who, because there weren't enough people buying retirement residences, some people were buying them to for their kid to live in when they went to UT, right? So those people didn't actually have money saved up. They were, in their 40s or 50s, and they expected to be able to get a mortgage.
So eHome is a good example of how, a life lease model can work, but the sponsor of the project needs to be extremely well capitalized and have very, very deep pockets. If you don't have those deep pockets, you should not embark on a project like that, is basically what it comes down to.
And they have to know what they're doing.
But I just
They have
wanted
to hire
yeah.
competent
I just
construction
wanted
companies.
to add that I was at a workshop that was sponsored by Minister Deepika Demarla, and she's the Minister of Senior Affairs. And I thought, maybe she's announcing new beds. She was going through different ethnic communities across Ontario, telling them, build retirement homes. CMHC will give you a loan. Because long-term care beds are so expensive for the government, they're telling them, CMHC will give you a loan to build retirement homes. So if we lose this, how will we ever get a loan from CMHC to build retirement homes? So it's something that we have, it's one of the reasons why we must save this Rose of Sharon DC. Thank you. Susan?
I don't really need the slide. Well, I can. So, for the source of funds, okay. So we're going by like a rule of thumb, and a rule of thumb, one rule of thumb that's used in valuing the license, right, is it's about somewhere between 100,000 to 60, about 60,000 to 100,000 per bed. So if we go to the higher end of that range and think 60 beds, $100,000 per bed, the purchase, the ticket is going to be somewhere in that $6 million range. That's one way to look at it. As I say, this is a closed bidding process. That's one way to look at it, right? There might be other valuations. You can do all kinds of other analysis, including, I don't know, I don't think you do discounted cash flow from nursing homes. You do either on a bed basis or some kind of cap rate basis. Anyway, so there's going to be the purchase price, there's going to be closing costs. The closing costs on this thing, on the legals, are going to be just astronomical, even though my firm's going to be doing it, because the reciprocal rights of way and all of that sort of stuff are so complicated. And then you have to apply to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to be the transferee. And because we are not, that is, Arirang today is not the operator of a nursing home, the actual process, as I understand it, to take place is that you are first going to have to be approved as an operator and then have the licenses transferred to you. Now, we're told that that should not be a prohibitively difficult process, and the fact that we are today not the operator of a nursing home won't be sort of
Bar us.
yeah, but it'll be a challenge, and that's why you need to have a board, an audited financial statement, all the other regular sort of stuff, because what the ministry is really looking for is they're looking for long-term sustainability. They want the successor operator to be able to operate that thing competently and with financial integrity for the for the foreseeable future. They don't want to be embarrassed again.
And some of the backstory, because I didn't get into it, but if you look at the publicly available materials, some of the things that were going on by Rose of Sharon and certain individuals to try to save this at all costs were not anything to be proud of, to put it bluntly. So, that's all out in the public record now. The ministry knows what was going on, CMHC knows what was going on. So the Korean community as a whole right now, doesn't have a great reputation when it comes to this project. And so one of the things that, people have said from time to time is that anyone that was involved in the old Rose of Sharon, if they're involved in any new purchaser, like that won't fly. The people that were involved in the old project are sort of blacklisted from being involved on new projects. So, that's how serious this stuff can be. So, we're very cognizant of that, and so I know that AFC and the task force, they're aware of that, and so they've been very careful about getting the right kind of people on the board and being involved in the organization. Just another thing that we didn't touch on, and I think some of you may wonder, is that right now the nursing home is being operated by a contractor. They're called Assured Care, and so that contractor was put in place by the original Rose of Sharon people, and then the receiver maintained that contract because they were doing a very good job. And so they've still been operating the nursing home in terms of running the operations, and they've been running it well in black. And so once Arirang, if it acquires the nursing home, it's not like it has to all of a sudden start to know how to operate. There will be someone that will continue to operate that nursing home. So,
well, is that going to be the plan moving forward though? Because
In the
I assume
immediate
that,
term,
yeah.
in the immediate term, for sure, it will help secure long-term care, like Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care approval, as well as receivership approval, if there's continuity in management, for sure, absolutely.
And you mentioned the necessity of establishing a board, ensuring that there's like a plan and all that. Is that going to be a factor in the bidding process as well? And if so, then
No, we don't think so.
You don't
We don't
think
think
so?
so. There's already a board in place, and we don't think there should be any issues with that. When I was talking about a long-term plan, though, I wasn't really talking about only for Rose of Sharon. I was really talking about for the community as a whole. Because really, see, what's going on here is our community is just a subset of the larger Canadian Ontario community. We have exactly the same issues. We have an aging population. We have limited funding to serve that population. We have people, not only an aging population, but an aging population that's living longer. Why are we going to need nursing home beds? Because you can't have 70-year-olds looking after their 90-year-old parents. When you're 70, to be able to provide full-time care to a 95-year-old is just not on, right? So our issues are exactly the same as the issues across the whole. We have, the dementia is a problem in the community. It's a problem in the demographic as a whole. And so what we need to do, but the big barrier is language. As Eunice was saying, it's cognitively we decline as we get older, and our ability to function in an acquired language declines as we get older. And that's really exacerbated when you have dementia. When you have dementia, your ability to communicate in an acquired language really it deteriorates. So we need to partner, we need to integrate with the programs that are already available through LIN, and we need to be able to go to the Ontario government and say, here's our community. We are X number of people. This is what our demographic profile looks like. These are the services that we need to serve our community. We're not doing that right now. Here's something. The government of Ontario announced 2 months ago or something like
November
that,
2nd.
in November, that they were going to make available another
5,000
beds
in the next 4 years.
and
10,000
Over
over 10 years.
This is so wonderful. Anyway, So they are going to be opening up that.
30,000
Yeah.
over 10 years.
30,000 over 10.
5,000 over the next 4 years.
They're going to be opening that up to get proposals. We as a community are not in a position where we can put together a credible, competitive bid, proposal to get any of that funding.
Can I just say something before we, okay, first Susan, she first called me like in the summer last year. She knew nothing, and correct me if I'm wrong, very little about seniors care, the senior situation here, the government funding, how the process works. She knew very little about it. She just had a elderly parent, I think. So she's in the same situation as all of you, but if you listen to her now, you know, and she has a full-time job, and all right, and she's a partner, and this isn't her area. So, you know, I just want to point that out. Same thing with Eunice. You hear her talking about the continuum of care in this language that I don't understand either, but like she also, you know, her practice is not in this area, and when she started Arirang, you know, AFC back, you know, in 2015 or whatever, she did not know any of this. So this is just a matter of people getting involved. So don't think that just because you're not in the industry, you don't know about seniors care, and you don't have any experience with it, that you can't contribute, because these guys have been phenomenal in getting us to where we are now.
But really, you know, even though the Rosa Sharon is kind of a sad story, it is definitely our hope that this rather unfortunate relationship will end up being a catalyst to bring the community together and to make us realize that we have a responsibility to our seniors.
So I think the burning question on everybody's mind, we talked about the $6 million valuation, and which, you know, it's a closed bid, so we don't know what we don't know. But I think the burning question is just to be able to understand how much has been raised and how much more we feel that would be helpful, you know, to what we're trying to do. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about, you know, what are the sets of donations to date and how are donations made, like the two options.
So we were able to accumulate the funds that we have primarily on the basis that they are dedicated to the acquisition of the nursing home. And they're being held in escrow accounts, 2 of them, right?
Yes, Shannon and Korea Exchange Bank.
And so they agreed to open, they were very, very, very helpful and cooperative, and opened these accounts for us where people could make donations to the Korean Nursing Home Fund. They were held in these accounts. They're being held there today. They'll be drawn down at close, and at close or shortly before is when those donors will get their charitable receipts for the amounts that they donated. There were certain people, not that many, who donated directly to Arirang, and those, you know.
They'll get the tax
Yeah.
receipts for those.
Right.
Susan, maybe you want to explain the expenses?
All right, so if we have about $3.5 million and we set aside maybe $500,000 for closing costs, because there's land transfer tax and other things like that too. Then, you know, at 50% LTV, we probably can get mortgage financing. It would be far, far preferable though if we could really reduce the amount of the debt and have very, very little. Like ideally, I would love to close this thing with maybe only $1 or $1.5 million in mortgage financing and the rest of it in cash. Because for a couple of reasons. One, because if we are able to have a very, very low LTV, then our interest rate will be much better. Like we'll just be able to get much more favorable terms from our lenders. And as it is right now, it's unlikely that we'll be able to get a conventional mortgage anyway. We're going to have to go to an alternative lender, and you know, alternative lenders charge higher rates, right? And secondly, this is a charity, right? So we're going to have to pay down that debt sooner or later. Every dollar that we don't have to use to service the debt is a dollar that can go into
Services.
Yeah, services for the seniors. So that's why we would love to be able to raise more money. We think we have enough now that we can put in a bid without a financing condition. We've spoken to some lenders informally, and we think that we can get first mortgage financing. But as I say, it would be just so wonderful if we could do this as an all cash, or with just a very, very small amount of mortgage financing. Yes.
You had a question?
I did. So Susan, maybe you touched on it briefly, but just for everyone in the room, it may be helpful to explain to me a couple of things. Just a question. First one being, can you speak a little bit more about what goes into the process of this closed bid? So what Arirang will have to submit in addition to the amount and the conditions, and if you think what type of discretion you think that the receiver has, if any, to consider other variables other than just the final price. And the second question being, is there a chance, do you think, that Arirang is the only bidder for this portion? And if so, how does that change our bidding strategy?
So the court has appointed a real estate agent called Jensen, who apparently is the guy in the industry that lists and sells nursing homes. And he's been given a mandate to go out and contact as many prospective purchasers as possible, because, you know, the idea is to get as many bids as possible so that there will be a competitive bidding process. I'm told reliably that neither Monshong nor Yihong are interested in the bid. I'm told reliably that this is unlikely to be an attractive property for the for-profit nursing home sector because it's 60 beds. And the for-profit nursing home sector doesn't get out of bed for 60 beds. And not only is it only 60 beds, but, okay, it's 60 beds and they're stacked 20, 20, 20, okay? And the nursing home regulations allow you to have per floor, if you like, 32, 32, 32. And it has to do with the number of RNs per floor, so your staffing costs per floor and other things like that. So nobody who builds a nursing home today would build a 20, 20, 20. They would build it 32, 32, 32 in order to maximize the efficiency. So for those kinds of reasons, we don't believe that this is an attractive opportunity for a Chartwell or whoever, like the for-profit nursing home operators. Having said that, because it is a Class D facility or AA facility, and because it's in prime real estate in the city of Toronto, for sure there are going to be some bids. They may be lowball bids, but there's not going to be a shortage of interest in the property.
And especially now, because Class C residential long-term cares, they have to go and be Class A certified or they'll lose their license. So they may be interested in transferring their license over if they don't have to keep the Korean residents from too long. They may do that. But thankfully, because of the announcement on November 7th that they're announcing 5,000 new beds, so hopefully we're hoping that the attention has been deflected. So they're more interested in getting new beds from the government rather than seeking Rose of Sharon. So we're just hopeful about this. So you're right, that we may be the only bidder. And then, of course, the acquisition team will have to change our strategy. But we don't know whether we will be or not.
And in terms of...
The other thing that we got to think about is not a bid just from the nursing home, but someone coming in and wanting to buy the whole building, and then turning around and saying, "I'm just going to lease you the nursing home," or to the Hungarian community, or to some other community. To me, that's not a great situation because that really does not secure the future for the Korean community. But in my mind, that could be a bigger threat. Someone who's looking at buying the entire building and saying, okay, I'm going to turn this into a rental facility or maybe a continuum of care. You know, I'm going to have assisted living, I'm going to have independent living, and then I got this nursing home portion. So,
I mean, considering the price of land in Toronto, it's a possibility.
And in terms of, sorry, just the closing process. Okay, so the the receiver has an obligation to maximize the proceeds on disposition, right? But not only that, this isn't like, where you can get the bids and then just close the net in 20 days or 30 days or whatever. The transfer of the license takes anywhere from 8 months to a year. Because of that, the receiver is going to want to select a partner, a purchaser who's going to stick with them through the long term to get that transfer, and who's willing to spend the money to, go through to meet with the ministry, however many times you have to meet with the ministry to secure the transfer. So they're also looking for certainty of close as well as just the purchase price. Like the certainty of completing the transaction will be a consideration that receivers will take into account.
Ms. Ali, you had a question?
Yes, sorry, I just had my hand up for a while, but do you know who the LIN is? Do you know who the local health integration network is of the home health center?
Oh, it's a central.
Toronto Central?
Yeah, Toronto Central.
Because my understanding is that I think that the LINs also have the right to review the transfer application, and I think they
do.
can provide input, or they recommend, I think that they provide a recommendation, which the MOH will.
That's the Toronto Central.
Toronto Central.
Yeah, Toronto Central, not the Central.
Okay.
Eunice, just
Yes.
so that we have a full set of information where we can go about and solicit our friends for donations.
Mm-hmm.
When we make donations to AAFCC for purposes of acquiring this, LDC, is that donation conditioned so that in the unlikely, hopefully unlikely event that we're not able to acquire the LTC, is that donation being returned, or is that being
Okay, so
funded for?
the funds have
Yeah.
to be payable to Korean Nursing Home Fund. It cannot be to AAFCC. Because once we receive the funds, we have to issue the charities receipt. So it will be held in Shinhan or Korea Exchange Bank, Hana Bank, KB
Yeah, that's it.
Hana Bank, so that in the event we fail and we don't get the nursing home, then we are returning all the money.
Oh, I see.
So the
Instead of-
payee is not Arirang. It has to
I
be
see.
Korean Nursing Home Fund.
How is that documented though?
Me?
Yeah, like so you're gonna return the money if the bid is unsuccessful?
Yes.
But how is that documented?
So all the
donation?
checks I receive have been scanned and saved.
No, but is there some type of agreement that each?
Essentially, the agreement was that when we went out into the community, primarily the Koreans, through the Korean media,
Right.
we had a series of articles and releases and things that were published in the Korean newspaper that said that when you make your check payable to the Korean Nursing Home Fund, those amounts will be returned to you in the event that the transaction does not close.
Is that legally binding?
Well, I guess the acquisition team,
Yeah.
we don't have anything legally signed.
We didn't.
But
if
we put our
yeah,
reputations
yeah.
online, saying these monies will be held in those accounts, and then withdrawal will not occur unless 5 of us sign.
I guess to follow up on that question, for those of us who would rather prefer to see that money stay with AAFCC in
Nothing prevents you
in
from
the event-
donating
Yes,
to
we
it.
actually have a.
So if we make the donation straight to AAFCC instead of this fund, can that fund be then directed at the discretion of AAFCC to
No,
fund
we
the
actually
activity?
have 2 accounts for AFCC. One that we keep at TD is specifically for the nursing home purchase, and then the money that's goes into that account will be used for the closing funds. So that's how we deem it to be. So, and then we have a separate account where we run the adult day programs, and of course it's a low on the balance. However, we have kept everything separate because what we're doing to the community is to raise funds for the nursing home. Then, if your intention is that, then we specifically put it into a separate account.
And we got permission from CRA to be able to accumulate funds, because
Right.
normally charities have to disperse it.
But I want to take this opportunity to appeal to you about funding our adult day program too, because we stepped up and said, okay, we'll be the organization spearheading this effort to get the Rose of Sharon nursing home. We raised from our community and all the people who used to donate to our adult day program, we got them to donate for the nursing home. So our fund actually we will run out of the funds to run the LD program July of 2018. So I've been writing to the ministry and then some of the MPPs who say would help, saying why we need the money and how it should be funded by Lynn. It should have been funded a long time ago. We are registered in the Ontario Health Line as at Arirang ADP program, and it's managed by CHATS. So everything is available. We are just as equally qualified to provide these services as any other Lynn-funded agencies. However, we don't have funding. So actually, I brought my letter for you to forward to your NPPs, saying, please fund the ADP program. Then all I'm asking you to is forward it on and tell them this is an important program. And there are advices given to the Lynn saying, you are currently funding these programs based on geography, boundaries. No, if you want to reach out to ethnic communities and provide health equities, health services based on equitable distribution, it should not be based on geography. We're saying it should be based on certain ethnicity. So we wrote all this out. So I'm going to hand these out to you, read it, and please forward it out to your MPP, because one MPP, two MPP, it's just not enough. They're busy campaigning. This is perfect time to send these out. So I brought 25 copies. Please take them. And now, if you have, I just want to go over, what can you do for us? What can we do together? So just, unless you have additional
You switch to
questions.
slide.
Eunice, before you go into that last point, so can you also share for the benefit of the large group an idea of when you think the bidding will happen? I know that right now it's still kind of unsure. But
So I talked to the receiver last week, and he's not committing to a date because he doesn't know. He doesn't want to commit to a date that he's not sure about. But just within the four corners of this room and just between us girls, like, here's the deal, okay? Normally, the receiver is working, right? Even though it's a court-appointed receiver, they're getting pressure from the bank, right? Because the bank wants its money, right? The bank here is People's Trust, but does People Trust care? No. Why? Because the entire matter is covered by CMHC. So who at CMHC is phoning up Deloitte every day saying, what is going on here? I want my money.
Nobody.
So there's not, nobody is lighting a fire under anybody's tail here, which, I'm not sure that I'm all that concerned about, because all of this delay, it does tend to mean that all of the building deficiencies are getting rectified, the engineering drawings are getting, rectified. Like, when we, hopefully, we acquire the facility, it will be pretty clean.
So, what can you do? Donate, because like Susan had said, if we have a smaller mortgage, we'll have a better chance of being successful running it. Donation should not just stop there. I heard EHAL raises over $3 million every year. And then they probably put it together and keep it for the next opportunity. Because once the 5,000 beds are announced, and then the government says, put in your proposals. Are we ready? We're not, because we don't have money. So we need to have a systematic donation set up so that we can, as a community, have something to lean on, if something to go back to, the capital funds necessary to do the next step. Volunteer, like me, Susan, and everybody else. Volunteer and get involved, because it's your parents, they're your grandparents. Write to local MPP. This is what I'm asking you to do, because we need the funding to continue adult aid program. We service 25 seniors, and there's a waiting list approaching 50. And we've only been in operation for only a year and a half. And there are people who travel from West Toronto an hour on Wheel-Trans to go there, because that's when they meet their friends, they can talk to people, discuss things about life, what's happening in the world, and have a nice meal. They have karaoke, and then they have fun, they have exercises, and then they go home. So this is so important. If we can open another one out in west side of Toronto, then we will be able to service so many more people. Not only that, we only run the current program 2 days a week. If we can run it for 5 days, I mean, the church stays empty, right? We noticed, like you read from the summary I had provided for your MVPs, there was additional funding given to adult day programs just recently. And what they did was they would only give it to LIN licensed agencies, so we didn't get any. We're at a risk of losing, or rather, like closing this program, yet they got the additional funding and they were able to extend the hours so that the people who do come there already receiving services can stay longer. But that's not reaching out to our community or any other ethnic communities. Start a petition. Now, Rose of Sharon, when it sort of started brewing, and then the people got the whole the notion that it's going to be sold. The first generation started a petition, and then they started saying, "Please give it to the Korean community." And I don't know how many of that signatures are readily available, and how many. I mean, it may have stopped at 1,000, it may have stopped at 2,000, but I think there are 100,000 Koreans living in GTA. So start a petition. Let's get the signatures together. Let's not do it at the last minute. Let's do it in advance. So I think it's important that we have an idea, and then we have to work on it, and then that's one thing that you can do. Spread and share the information, what you learned today, because there are a lot of people who do not understand what our needs are and what we can do about it. So far, we've been, for many, many years, for decades, we did nothing. So this is time for us to step up and do something about it. And take charge. Set up a new task force for future beds. The current task force members, we're approaching our 60s.
We're going to retire.
We have our task force member here, Mrs. Choi. She's one of our board members from the very beginning, and she's over 80. and then of course we do have younger people joining, but I think it's important, the task force that we have set up for Rose of Sharon, I think our mandate ends there. I mean, we may be able to provide advice and continuation in the future, but I think it's important for you, the younger generation, to have a task force to set up a plan for the future. So plan ahead and fundraise, so we're ready.
And give some money to the continuation of the adult day
program.
Honestly, we're not talking about a lot of dough, guys. It's like $30,000
No,
to
it's
do it, right?
for a year we can run it. For the 2 days, $58,000.
$58,000 for
At least we can keep the program going for
Like,
$58,000.
really, we should be able, within our community, that should be so easy to raise. $58,000 to keep this one program going for a year. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, and then so here it is, ways to donate, so that's something we had discussed. And she mentioned, Susan had mentioned, there's a United Way campaign. You can direct your donations to our charity. And surprisingly, I did get $360 last year from United Way, so that worked. You can do online donations. If the online donations you do, it's for nursing home, then it will go into automatically the TD account that's reserved for the nursing home purchase. You can make a check payable to the Korean Nursing Home Fund, and this money is kept in escrow until we are successful with the bid. Now, the other thing is part of your slideshow, but volunteer and ask to be added to our distribution list. And we're online, so follow us and keep your interest up there, because before long I might need to go to a nursing home, and I might want to have 콩나물국 instead of chicken soup. You know what I mean? And this is so important. Food is so important in our lives. And I had a lady who came to drop off a check for the Korean nursing home, and she said, my son married an Italian girl, and they have a son, and one day, 2 days a week, the Italian grandmother watches the baby, and 2 days a week, she watches the baby. when the grandchild got sick, her son called her up and said, "Mom, can you make that juk for my baby?" Because you remember, when you're sick, your mom made you juk, right? And as a child growing up, I think we all had that kind of experience, and it's important that as people grow older, they become like children, right? So I think our parents deserve that juk if that's what they want, right? So please be involved, please volunteer, please donate. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, so I just wanted to provide just a brief overview of what we've covered, just because there's a lot of information there. So we talked about, Phil had provided information on the background of how we got here, as well as the receivership. We talked about the receivership proceedings, current status and sale order. We talked about AAFCC, they are the purchaser. And we talked about funds that are required. So these are legal, these are consulting, and the purchase fund in and of itself, valued at $6 million. Who currently runs the home is Assured Care. And there are some immediate issues that we need to also take into consideration if it is approved. There's ongoing fundraisers that are going to be needed. We mentioned and showed you the status of donations to date. We also talked about how donations are made, the two options. And in addition, what happens if the bid is unsuccessful. So based on all that we've covered, we'll open it up to the floor for any additional questions.
You could all pull out your phones and donate right now.
No questions? Wow.
Is there any thoughts to, if this is not successful, to take that 3.4 and buy something new?
Well, you committed to give it back.
The community wants, it's the same one, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if there's anything that can be purchased for that money. It's already, the reason why we're able to get this nursing home for potentially $5 or $6 million is because it's being severed by Deloitte. Because to build that, I heard with the capital funds and everything, it costs over $20 million to build a whole building.
Yeah, I think the per square foot now, building anything inside City of Toronto is
Prohibited.
approaching, what's
Yeah.
that, what, somebody just.
Well, condos get sold for $1,000
What's the per square foot cost of building a condo now?
1,000 at least.
A lot. But I mean, a nursing home's even way more because it just has so much more infrastructure you gotta put in.
And that's
So-
not, that's before the development charges, like, it's just.
If it doesn't go through, then there's no plan B.
The plan B is up to you,
Yeah,
the new
so
task
that's-
force.
I mean,
Right? I mean, if the community agrees, if we don't get this Rose of Sharon, the 3.4 should be to be held by the task force for the next round of beds. 5,000 becoming available in the next 4 years.
So something that recently happened in Vancouver was a Korean woman made a very large donation.
The slide of Eunice O?
Eunice O. She made a $1.5 million donation to a non-Korean nursing home operator. And through that donation, they're building this huge state-of-the-art facility. And one floor is going to be dedicated to Korean service and Korean culturally sensitive heritage floor. So that's one way of doing it where they don't have enough of the infrastructure and the people. It probably is a smarter way to do it. But they partnered with people who knew what they were doing and strategically donated the money.
I mean, that's still possible with our relationship with Ehon or Moshong, because they're going to go after those 5,000 beds. And if we had money to donate and say, we want one floor out of your nursing home to be dedicated to Koreans, it's a very, very, very possible. So fundraising continuing for the next set of beds, it's so important. I mean, we need the money to buy this, but the next step is equally important. This is what I wanted to tell you today.
But you're saying that one floor is only 32 beds, right?
Usually, yes.
So we're trading 60 for 32 if we don't get this.
That's true.
Well, depending on how many floors we buy.
No.
5 floors.
Well, yeah, and because that's an interesting point too, right? Like, I think a lot of us have this proclivity towards wanting to have our own thing, our own building, and everything like that. And that's kind of like our own 자존심 and 욕심, right? But I mean, you know, in the reality of like today's.
The Vietnamese, the Filipinos, they're partnered with the Chinese too.
Yeah, Elon has in their Mississauga, their Filipino store, and then also, I think it's Scarborough, no, the Nickel, and they have the Japanese Canadians.
And one thing that's really, because there's a very strong similarity in culture and food and things like that, so that would totally make sense. I mean, those are things that you guys should get together and think about and talk
Absolutely.
about.
So right now, for the first generation, we have to save these 60 beds for our 60 residents.
And it makes sense because it then gives us an opportunity to prove our concept a little bit more, and like so like but it is interesting about thinking about, you know, the partnership model.
Yes, absolutely.
No, and that's a very fair point, but I think the Rose of Sharon is a launching pad.
Yes.
And the other thing we got to remember is, as our generations go through, you know, we're going to become much more integrated into Canada. You know, because I don't know how many more Koreans are continuing to come into Canada on an annual basis. Right?
But it won't be none. That's the thing.
I'm talking about as generations keep.
Yeah, but there will
flipping.
continue to be Korean immigration to Canada, and of younger people, and they tend to bring their parents at some point. I mean, so when we build the infrastructure here, it'll be for the foreseeable future. Not, you know, it's not a one generation thing by any means.
No, I'm just talking about 3-4 generations from now.
Yeah, but in 3 or 4 generations, it might not just be kimchi, it'll be like kimchi poutine.
It's already out there.
No, I know, but you want that here in a retirement home, you don't want that.
It's like New York City, right? They've been having immigrants forever, they still have immigrants. Toronto's likely still to have an influx of immigrants because Canadians don't have babies.
But you know, the 60 beds is just not enough. Like if they're announcing 5,000 beds and potentially 30,000 over the next decade, you have to think about what is the percentage of Koreans in Ontario. Do you think we're maybe 1%? Are we less than 1%? So, you know, from 5,000 beds, 1%, it's 50 beds, right? So you have to think of entitlement too. I mean, we're paying taxes, we work here, and I think we should be able to try to get those beds.
You have a question in the back?
There's a question.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for your talk today. So you guys have sort of stated that the Rose of Sharon project, that's kind of the mandate of this specific task force in its current sort of form. And you guys have sort of challenged us to sort of like take up the mantle and sort of like take it to the next phase. So my question, I guess, is in terms of like organizational maturity and in terms of like crafting a longer term vision, because I think one of the things you guys came across very clearly about is this is really just, if anything, this is a watershed moment. This should be the wake-up call to a much larger, more systemic issue for our community. So where are we in terms of our organizational maturity? Like, where are we in terms of trying to get to that point where you think like we're in front of the problem? Like, is there task force being formed? Is this really we're starting from scratch?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of
Today
the,
might
So
be a
what would that,
start.
and that transition,
Yeah.
what does that sort of look like? Like if we have a plan,
I
if
mean,
I should.
So-
because of Rose of Sharon, we created this task force.
I mean, one of the
Let's step
things,
forward.
you know, we've noticed, and the reason we did this is because there's still such a huge language gap. And there are some people in this room who, you know, we see all the time that are engaged in the community and doing community events. There are a lot of people here that I see maybe once or twice a year, that's it. And so this was one of the reasons why we did this. We realized the information is not getting out there. And it's right now, there isn't any organizational structure because there aren't enough people involved. There just isn't enough of us involved, right? It's the same people we see time after time at every event. We're trying to grow it. We've been trying to, you know, different organizations have been trying to engage the second generation community more and more. But until that grows, it's going to be hard to create that organizational infrastructure that you're looking for. But it starts somewhere, just like, and that's kind of what I was trying to point out is that 6 months ago, Susan knew very little about this stuff.
Well, 5 years ago in 2013, I think we met at Julia Shindong's office in Ryerson. sometime in May, and that was our first meeting, and at that time, we didn't even have a name. We were not called Arirang Age-Friendly Community Center. We met monthly for a whole year before we decided, okay, we have to incorporate. We met another year before we said, okay, we can't get any money from the government, so we have to fundraise and start something ourselves. So the first ADP program gala, from the money raised from the gala, we set up that ADP program, which we're trying to save right now. But until you actually start meeting, talking about it, getting ideas together, and putting your commitment towards the project, nothing will happen. It took us, we've been around only 5 years, and before that eventful day, I didn't know anything about senior care. I didn't know that. I thought just people grow old and they go to nursing home. I didn't know anything about these community healthcare services that we're entitled to, that our parents are entitled to. And if they can go there because it's comfortable and it's comforting, then it will be great. Then I can drop off my mom, and I can go to work, and actually pick her up later without feeling I have abandoned her to stay home all by herself watching TV all day. You know? So 5 years ago, that's how we started. I think today is like a watershed moment for you. So get together, get like-minded people together, and think about the future, because it's really, really important.
Michelle?
Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, I'm going to speak as myself. But I'm also part of PTWA, so it's nice to be here. And my grandmother is actually part of the... Okay. And my grandmother is actually part of the AAFCC program, and she's had only good things to say about it. And it's unfortunate that I'm hearing it's going to be running out of funds very soon and ending in July, because I have seen the change in her as a person who's just watched Korean dramas all day, all night, but now she's more alive, she's more active, and she looks forward to these the day program. And I asked her one time, I went with my boss, and we went in, we checked it out, and we see her engaged and having fun. I was like, oh, who are your friends here? And she's like, everybody's my friend, and it's very exciting to see them so alive again, and re-engaged with their youthfulness. And so I guess one idea I want to put forth is having, as a younger generation like myself, trying to get more involved. It's a hard ask. And that's just my honest opinion, because we're busy, we have our work, we have our life after, and unless it's salient to us at this point, to be honest, we kind of push it aside, right? And I think everybody can agree with that. But I think maybe if you were to bring them in and show them how much this program is effective and is positively influencing the seniors' lives, like for me, when I saw that, I was like, I want to help, and seeing that firsthand really helped convince me that I need to take action. So maybe I'm proposing to you is that we have more joints community, or like an open house, for example, to see younger people, get younger generations out and to see the change. And I think the government of Ontario has actually put in some new programs for youth and seniors to interact, and to kind of maybe participate in that. Just a thought. Thank you.
And in terms of, where do we go from here? So one of the things that we will do with the Rose of Sharon, or the Arirang, is we will have an advisory board as well as the actual operating board of the entity. We're in the course of setting out terms of reference for that advisory board. And beyond the advisory board, we will have sort of community ambassadors. But that's not really what you're talking about. You're talking about where do we get a group of people who are committed and interested and willing to work toward a more comprehensive sort of strategic vision to look after our seniors, and that doesn't exist today.
My thoughts on that are, and this is coming from somebody who was not involved in the Canadian community at all before KPWA. And we have a very similar story where we met for an entire year in 2014 to build our vision and our mandate of what we wanted to be and why we wanted to do it. And then we went out and then we grew 100 strong members in a year's time, which only goes to show that there was, there was a need out there. My advice is to go and find out what KC community organizations that are out there. We have an athletic association, a medical association, law association, scholarship fund. There's a lot, and all of these organizations need volunteers. It's all volunteer work, all of our side jobs. But the one thing that the community leaders that I consider to be the really prominent community leaders that we have here, KCWA as well, is we've recognized that we're very fragmented, and we recognize that we need to come together. And issues like the Rose of Sharon nursing home and saving it are something that affects all of us, regardless if it's specific to women's issues or athletic, getting kids to be more athletic. So by doing this, we're addressing a community need, and all the organizations are coming together. And I think the point that Phil was making is, because we're doing this, we're actually seeing the same people over and over again. And there is such thing called donor fatigue, because we all have our day jobs and whatnot. So really what we want to do is become an ambassador for your community. Go out, get your friends. This is why we put this together. There was already an information session, that was done, but we specifically recognized that we need to reach out to a specific segment of the community that would not otherwise have had a direct connection. And it's going to be through word of mouth and being ambassadors. So that's what you can do. And I think everybody here is feeling the same thing that all of us have been feeling for months in the last year, which is that we do need to band together and come together. And there's a real issue, here. Today it's about the Rose of Sharon, but tomorrow it's about the future, and what we're doing. So it's a great question.
And the other, just one last point that I want to make on that, because what you're talking about is really important. One of the other reasons for holding this kind of event and not just doing email blasts and information is so that what's out there, who are out there. You can see now that the people that are involved are sophisticated, they're professionals, they know what they're doing. It's not the same group of people that was doing the first Rose of Sharon. So although there isn't that infrastructure in place that you're talking about, the seeds are all here, right? We have the capacity, we have the people, we have experts in various different fields that if we get together and start just meeting and putting some thoughts to the process, great things can happen. So that's another reason why this was important for us to really reach out and get people who haven't really been involved to see who are the players out there, what's out there, and you just need to be willing. And then there's the support network that's starting to grow, where you will get the right people you'll get connected to the right people. If you have an idea, you can be connected to people in government or whoever that can start to make things happen, because we can mobilize now. And that's something that we couldn't do before. But we're starting to get to that point where we can mobilize quickly. And the other thing is, this is the reason why we got Arirang Korea involved, is because we wanted this whole session videoed and available, because a lot of people won't be able to come today and couldn't make it, so that this could be available for all of your friends who don't speak Korean, don't read the Korea Times, or won't watch all TV without subtitles. Now they can learn about what's going on as well.
I have a question about what the plans are should we succeed. So I know that that's not really our current situation, but if in the case that we do succeed with this bid, what are the plans in place in terms of operations, in terms of strategizing? I know, Susan, you touched on strategizing as a community. Is there any thought around that, and have those seeds been planted, if in the case we do succeed?
So, sort of the day after closing, nothing, immediately changes, other than I think, you have to make arrangements for the government. Actually, that's a really good point. In terms of the mechanics, right? Government funding comes into the bank account of the licensee. So there's some process by which the funding, which was previously given to, which today goes into Rose of Sharon account, which is actually operated by Deloitte, but is still in the name of Sharon. Rose of Sharon will go into an account in the name of Arirang, for example. And would actually, so one of the things that's underestimated actually right now in our budget, is we need probably $250,000 of working capital. Because there's gonna be a little gap between on the day that we close and the day that we have to make payroll and the time that the government funding comes in, because government funding comes in arrears as opposed to in advance, but payroll is paid in advance. So we're gonna need some working capital so we don't fail our payroll on our first payroll that we're operating, stuff like that. So we know what we need to do, like, you know, that kind of thing. The other thing is, for example, that the employees, Arirang will become a successor employer. And just before this thing went into insolvency, they were certified by SEIU, I think, as a bargaining unit. So we know we're gonna have to conclude a collective bargaining agreement at some point following closing, because right now that process whereby the union has, you know, applied to come to the employer and ask for a collective bargaining agreement is in abeyance because of the receivership, but once the receivership is over, we'll be the successor employer, we'll have to conclude a collective bargaining agreement. So we know certain things that we have to do, but most of that will be taken care of by our operator, our licensed operator of nursing homes. And then we need to think, the board will need to consider whether, you know, over the 5-10-year term, do we wish to continue to have the nursing home operated by a third-party operator, or try to transition it to our own management. But quite frankly, to operate a 60-bed facility, you're not going to hire an FTE to operate it. It's just the economics aren't there.
An FTE?
Full-time employee.
All these acronyms.
I think maybe I would add that if we're successful in getting the home, you know, certainly I would think that the Arirang is going to become, we're going to try and become much more sophisticated about the needs of the senior community in Toronto, this Korean community, and what are the needs and what are the long-term plans, because we're going to go from a budget of $50,000 a year to
Operating budget of
$5 million a year, whatever. So, you know, there's a lot of thinking that's going to happen, a lot of planning and sort of gazing out into the future. And there needs to be probably transitioning too, in terms of the board, to the younger generation coming in with their ideas about what's required. So there's a lot of stuff to do.
Phil mentioned that the nursing home has always operated profitably, and then I think that is true. We just need to know how profitable, based on the cost sharing arrangements and, you know, what obligations that we're going to undertake after the split between the nursing home and the residences. But I think when they first hired Assured Care, there was an agreement. There was a requirement by the ministry for someone with experience to run the nursing home for 5 years. And I think that time is up. But at the same time, since we're not the original operator and then we'll be stepping in, we may be required to have an experienced operator run the nursing home for additional years. So that's something we'll have to determine along the way.
And that could be something that's part of the bid, right? Is the proposal when AAFC acquires, it could include, it depends on what the consultant says, but it could include an agreement or a commitment to keep Assured Care on for 5 years, so that it ensures that stability. And that could be part of what
there's
AAFC
also the
considers.
opportunity that if we cannot stay with Assured Care, we may just go with another organization with back office that would provide the admin. So it's an option that we're looking at, but for now, I think maintaining the status quo might be the best way.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I just, I think a lot of the conversation and the discussion has sort of been around whether we can secure the nursing home and then what will happen if we fail. But I don't think there's been as much discussion on what would happen if we succeed, and is the community in a good position to be able to operate the nursing home successfully moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, so some of that, you know, deals with also who the current board is of the AAFC, and that had been something that they they've been looking at, and I think there's been some transition
So
on
we
the
have-
board
We have transitioned some of the board members so that we could strengthen the expertise. And we're also going to rely on the advisory board, and we have plans to invite people with nursing home experience to sit on our advisory board.
And those things were done not for the purpose of acquisition per se, but really for the fact that we needed to make sure that the AFC looked like it could handle it once it acquired it and could actually handle it. So,
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Then thank you very much. This concludes our session.